Ladies and gentlemen of the Potiverse, why are we here today? Well, we're here because I, John, and
Brandon,
my intrepid companion in this adventure of discovery, learned recently that my brother-in-law had never listened to a podcast. This week, we will all be discussing episodes 1 and 2 of My Dad Wrote a Porno.
why on earth would we do that, John?
Because this is fucking making Doug listen to podcasts. Hey, theme song, do your goddamn job.
Doug's just a normal guy, still has his own, but he doesn't know why. Now the writing's on the wall. It's time he left the past, gonna listen to his first podcast. We know he's gonna have a ball. Interview celebrities, politics and all comedy. We'll make him listen to it all. Now here's Doug.
So, for those of you unfamiliar with the podcast, my brother-in-law, Doug. Doug,
Hello.
say hi.
Hello.
No, he did it without me even asking. That was good, Doug.
Yes, I'm like a trained monkey.
He's getting trained. He's
Exceptionally
learning.
well-trained. Doug had never listened to a podcast, and now we are on our 4th episode of quite literally making Doug listen to podcasts. This week we will be listening to the unbelievably successful, the hit, I think I can say, British podcast, My Dad Wrote a Porno. Now, Brandon, I know, as we've discussed in previous episodes, you are a power podcast listener. Am I? That makes me feel creepy every time I say it. But we listen to a lot of podcasts.
What would be the preferred nomenclature for you, John? Just spitball off the top of your head.
Podcastinista.
Ooh, okay.
Yep. I don't know if I feel any better about that.
No.
But I'm going to be honest, I like the response I got from you.
I think hipster, a pod hipster.
No.
No, that's bad. No. Everybody's groaning on that one.
Yep. We're absolutely.
All right, let's move on.
I may actually be editing that. That's how much I dislike that. But when it comes to this particular podcast, how familiar were you with this podcast?
This one I've listened to, but it's funny because it's something that I really am. I enjoyed it for the first 7 or so episodes, and I was listening to it with my fiance, which made it feel less creepy. Although it's not necessarily a creepy podcast. There's elements to it that could be construed as that.
So it didn't make it hotter listening to it?
No.
No,
as it turns out, the pedigree of the podcast itself makes it tough to appreciate the erotic element of it to some degree. And plus, they're damn funny, which makes it's easier to enjoy their podcast, and I feel less gross about the content that they're reading. But at some point in time, it was just like, I don't know if I'm going to keep listening to this. So I bailed after about 7 or 8 episodes. Although after listening to it again, I'm like, oh, we should really get back into that. I said to Maria, my fiance, because we were enjoying it. We were having a good time listening, and it's a fun one.
Well, I agree with you. I think I stuck with it a little bit longer. I cannot imagine listening to this with anyone who was not an intimate of mine, because although the erotica is clumsy to the extent that you question whether this man, the author, has ever actually had sex before, or has had any access not only to someone else's body, the female body, but his own body. At the same time, it is still uncomfortably intimate.
His choice of adjectives were curious at best and offensive at worst. The way that he described certain elements of anatomy.
The two girls started to excite each other, and soon their respective vaginas were wet and steaming.
And the physiology. And that was actually, because they're holding it up to light, it makes it so much more fun. But I have to wonder about the suffering that his wife must have gone through, the author of this said Porno.
You mean through her whole marriage?
Yeah, exactly.
Not just this podcast, but her
No,
whole
certainly
marriage.
not, yeah.
And
Well, Doug, before we get into your opinion, because we definitely want your opinion,
yes.
for those of our listeners who foolishly, I think, are not going along this journey with you and listening week by week, or maybe they're new to this podcast and they think,
Maybe that's what our listeners should do, is take the assignment to heart and listen, so that way when they listen to the next episode, they will also be in on it.
I hope to God that's what they're doing. That's what I want them to do.
If they're not listening along.
You heard it here, Doug. The eponymous Doug of making Doug listen to podcasts has pretty much thrown down the gauntlet.
You just said
on
do
this
it.
one.
I did.
Yeah.
I literally said Do it.
If I know anything about our listeners, and
Right now?
I don't believe we have any. I've said this many times, but the listeners that I like
Slow
to
and
imagine
steady.
we have,
They've got to be
yeah, we're
slow and
growing every
steady.
week. Yeah, I think so. I think we might be out of the ones and into the tens.
Yeah,
now.
I'm waiting for the tens number to show up on that little dial that I have. I have a dial in my bedroom.
When we hit double digits on that dial in your bedroom,
I am going cream.
I'm telling you. No, you are definitely thinking of another dial in your bedroom.
Is that different?
There's a different.
Woo! I am now concerned that it's only still in the single digits.
Well, now you've noticed our repertoire has gotten a little body.
It's gotten blue.
It's got really blue. It's gotten a little hot, and that is a perfect time to describe what this podcast is about for any of our listeners who maybe were not familiar with it. Host Jamie Morton discovered in 2015 that his retired, I'm going to say early 60s Northern Irish.
I believe he says 60s exact. 60 exactly.
60 exactly, Northern Irish father, had begun self-publishing adult erotica.
Correct.
And Jamie Morton.
That term loosely.
Very loosely, and we'll get to
In
that.
so many ways.
Right. Let's keep the double entendres to a minimum, or I know we won't. We're going to get lost in those weeds tonight, guys.
Yes.
And Jamie Morton, along with his two co-hosts, James Cooper and Alice Levine, or Levine, it's got to be Levine.
Let's go with Levine.
Levine.
She can correct us if she takes offense.
I'm assuming Alice is listening right now.
I have to assume.
Yeah. By the way, Alice, if I mispronounced your name, huge apologies. I'm a big
Call
fan. You're hilarious. We love you. Call in
call in.
now.
We're taking live
Hey,
calls.
by the way, first Alice Levine to call in right now wins a date with Doug.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but it's got to be right now. I mean, we're actually
literally
recording
at this moment.
Right. They read his father's adult erotica, of which there have now been multiple books released. Again, all of them digital, all of them self-published, even though I believe now he's gotten enough popularity that I think 5 and 6 are not going to be self-published.
He's sold a lot, and one of the things that was so fantastic about it, they were saying, like, he was selling it on Amazon for $1.99 when they started reading it.
Right.
And it became this huge success. Like, the podcast, because of his success, made it so that his dad made quite a bit of money selling those because people were intrigued.
Right,
as
he's
they
got
should
some
be.
celebrity fans. They've had Elijah Wood. They've had Michael Sheen on
Right.
there.
I think they actually once had Tony Blair.
They did have Tony Blair.
Tony Blair came on,
Yeah.
and he just tutted the whole time.
Yeah, it was very strange.
Very
and
strange.
a lot of Brits were very angry. Shouldn't he be doing something better with his time? Why is he listening to this? Now,
Doug, do you think that's true?
I absolutely do not think that's true.
That's correct. Tony Blair did not make an appearance.
Brandon, we'll be playing Is It or Is It Not Tony Blair later in the podcast. Let's not
Let's
jump
not
the
bury the
gun.
lead.
Now, Doug,
Yes.
we want to know, we're going to ask all the typical questions. I'm sure our listeners at home probably have a pre-printed sheet that have all the questions, and whoever is maintaining our Wikipedia site
Right.
is recording Doug's answers. But I just want to point out, to give everyone a sense who maybe, again, has not listened to My Dad Wrote a Porno, what the full title of the original book is. So this is a man writing alone in his shed in Great Britain, and this is what he believed was an appropriately...
I want to toss it
Yes.
to Doug and see if Doug remembers.
Doug, do you remember the full? Can
Or
we get
some
close?
appropriation.
Let's just forget about subtitle. What's
Right.
the principal two-word title?
Wasn't it Belinda Blinks or
Yes.
You're almost
Ding,
dead
ding,
on.
ding.
It's Belinda Blinked.
Blinked? Okay.
And so this is the full title. Belinda Blinked, a modern story of sex, erotica, and passion. How the sexiest... Yeah, there's two separate sentences. Yeah, that's right. How the sexiest salesgirl in business earns her huge bonus by being the best at removing her high heel. I'm assuming at that point, he literally passed out.
Right.
He went... Yeah.
That's a
was
lot
two
of
grades.
promise
That's a
on
lot.
the cover of that book.
How much time would you have to have spent just working every word, every syllable, making sure that it all flowed? I'm assuming 12 seconds.
You feel this
15
is like
seconds?
the Poisonwood Bible where there were paragraphs where the author says, and that paragraph took me 6 weeks to write.
Well, remember that during these episodes, it was a draft that they were reading.
Yes, correct.
And
This-
so
these first
it's
episodes.
conceivable that maybe he made some.
He was gonna cut that, he was
some
gonna edit.
choices over the course of time. We'll never know. We'll literally never know.
I think he's rip shit drunk on white wine when he reads, when he writes all of these. Now, Brandon, we have typical questions for posterity, for consistency.
Yes.
We have a list of questions we asked Doug.
Correct.
Like Bernard Pivot, the questions that are asked for inside. What's it called?
I was thinking James Lipton.
Yes, but
Inside the Actors
those
Studio.
are Bernard Pivot's questions.
I mean, nobody knows who that is, John.
You know,
Nobody.
the number of times Lipton has ripped off Pivot, that son of a bitch. Pivot, if you're listening, I'm there for you to take this guy to task.
I imagine Pivot is dead at this point.
I think you're probably
Hopefully
right.
long dead.
Brandon,
Yes, me.
hit Doug with the questions.
Aye.
Brandon, I'm going to remind you questions where, Doug, did you listen?
I was getting there, John. You give me a
was that
fucking second.
dramatic?
Yeah,
Sorry.
that was
Let's do
very
it again.
dramatic.
It's called a
pause.
Pregnant pause.
Let's do that.
John.
Let's do that again. Of course, we don't edit out anything.
Christ,
We want
listeners.
this. We want it to be
Listeners, you
real
hear what I'm dealing with?
and raw.
Hey, Doug,
Yes, sir.
did you listen to this podcast?
I did. It was painful.
It was painful.
Oh, we're back to that again.
Lovely.
Okay,
I'm so
but
excited.
I would say,
Doug, let's
right, but let's
walk
say
into
painful
it.
in a different way.
No, yeah, because
Right.
we'll delve
Right,
deep.
okay.
But the next question is, did you listen to both episodes in a row?
Yes, I did.
And did you do it?
I actually listened to the trailer, then the 2 episodes.
Oh, doing a little extra credit for
Right,
the
that-
listeners.
right. Do I get extra
Thank you, Doug.
Brandon, I want to remind you, we did not ask Doug to listen
Not
to the trailer.
assigned.
No.
Wow.
All right. To
How-
be fair, it was probably on accident.
Well, so okay. Next question.
Yes.
How did you go through the process of listening
This
to this
is.
pod?
Let me just say, this was a unsettling week of listening to the podcast.
I'm so excited to hear this story.
So,
Details, Doug.
there. Besides, we'll get into the content and
Yes.
the podcast itself.
But first, the machination
But
of
you
this
were-
began with it being challenging to find this podcast. Was that the case?
Well.
Because we know you have anxiety.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
download
Let's just say,
Yeah.
well, to make it simple, yes, it was very easy to find a lot of information about it, a lot of interviews with the host,
Yes.
a lot of things except for the actual podcast. So
Okay.
you forced me to do something I do not like to do,
Right.
which is download.
Yes. Also, Doug, that is the core conceit of this podcast. Is we're
Yes.
forcing you to do
Yes,
things
you
don't
are.
like to
we are
do,
pushing
don't.
your boundaries.
you don't want to do.
Right. So
bringing you into the world.
I downloaded an app to my Samsung Galaxy 8. Love you, Samsung.
No plugs.
I'm just saying, I love my phone.
No branded content.
Okay,
We are
sorry.
not being
But I do love my
parents.
phone. I love it so much that I don't want to download things to it.
Samsung, if you're listening, we will happily take you as a sponsor.
Yes, we
and
will.
make Doug, again, I say this every week and I couldn't be more serious. Do whatever you've given us that money for. We will have Doug anally insert
Wow,
his Samsung
no.
Galaxy 8 if you give us money.
I'm
Samsung-
confident that they
Doug,
don't want me to do that.
I'm killing your mic.
Let's pause, Doug. But a Samsung tattoo across his forehead,
Yeah.
perhaps?
Yes.
Like a teardrop tattoo, or maybe
yes.
like a...
All right, so let's get back to the reality.
At a
of my-
minimum, skinning his car in a Samsung
Oh, that's
Galaxy 8.
wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, that I would probably do.
Yeah, you
Samsung.
100% would do that.
I would do that. Okay, so was not able to listen to them on YouTube or something else.
Right.
I was forced to download an app that apparently plays podcasts.
What app was that podcast playing app?
I don't know.
Okay,
I do
fine.
know.
Let's move on.
You can look, and you could probably
Yeah,
figure it out. I was
let me
actually.
sort through your phone.
I was-
Let me just pawn through and see what I can
I
find.
was honestly trying to look for it right before we started to show you which one it was.
Always prepared.
Because for me, it's not just okay. Well, let's just download one. There's a lot of
Did you-
probably
did you
meaningless
Google it?
research
Yes.
that goes into deciding which one.
Right.
Wait, but did you pull it from the Google Play Store or from the
Yes,
Apple?
I have downloaded other things from Google Play because that's on my phone, and
Right.
so it makes
Well-
my life easy.
And Google Play does have some elements where they're guaranteed. They have some built-in feature wherein they're protecting you allegedly from malicious software.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that.
So yeah, well, I'm glad that you didn't because that your suffering
Spreaker.
pleases me. Spreaker, no familiar. You know the Play Store is so full of different apps,
right?
Written,
So yeah, so I did some research. I looked at some lists from what I consider hopefully reputable sources on
Right.
the top podcast apps to use and their features.
Fantastic.
My biggest thing about downloading any app, and I can tell you that I've stopped the download on several apps before and just deleted whatever they
Just got
put on the
scared,
phone.
pulled the
Fear,
record.
yeah, halfway through you went, I know it's that.
No, here's the thing. If I'm downloading an app to do one thing specific, like this app, which I was very happy with, All I want it to do is play a podcast. What I don't want it to do is have access to all my photos, access to my contacts, access to all my media. I don't need an app to do that unless that's what I want an app to do. So
what are you afraid of?
I want to know why they want, if they